So before we wrap up this initial attack vector section, I want to talk about the attack strategies that you might use when you're just starting out. Now we know all the attacks. How do we piece it together? And my thoughts are that we begin the day with man in the middle 6 or responder. And we sit there, and we've talked about this in the previous videos, but we want traffic to be generated, right? We need those users coming in. So 8 a.m. is a good time when users are starting to come in, or even after lunch when they're starting to log back in. You're going to have to run both of these on an assessment because you're going to have to assess for LMNR in the network, and you're going to have to assess for IPv6 in the network. So either one is fine. If you're looking for like a quick win, man in the middle 6 is probably faster nowadays. But I still like to start out with the responder to see how well the network is responding to us, right? Are they giving us hashes? Are the hashes easy to crack? If so, that's going to tell me that we're probably in for an easy assessment. If I'm not seeing LMNR enabled, that I might be in trouble here. They might have had a pen test before, or they might, know some of the common attacks and have already prevented against that. So when you run those, you're going to go ahead and run your scans to generate your traffic. Now, chances are that you're going to be running a Nessus scan to do this. You might also be running an Nmap scan of some sort to get quick results as well, but most places run Nessus. Now, if your scans are taking too long, if you have a big network, which it can happen, what I like to do is I like to just look for websites that are in scope. And this is another thing that we can do if we're trying to be quiet, as opposed to just like running scans. If your goal is to be quiet in the network, something that you can do is you can sweep the entire network for websites, okay? And I look with a tool called http_version. It's just a module that you can search in Metasploit. And you just say, hey, here's my range. I want to look and see if anything responds to HTTP version. When I send out an HTTP request from my computer, I want to see if anything else responds to that. And that's going to be less likely to get picked up because you're making traffic on 80 and 443, which is very common, right? As opposed to port scanning every single device in the network, which is going to get picked up pretty easily by a good SIM. So from here, what can we do? Well, we take those websites in scope and we can look at those logins, and we can check those logins for default credentials. And some of the things that we're looking for are like printers. I have gotten domain admin off a printer more than one time. So if you think about a printer, what does a printer have a feature of? Typically it has a scan feature. And that scan feature is a scan to computer feature, right? Well, a lot of times an admin will make that user that has to be able to scan from the printer to the computer via SMB, they'll make that user a domain admin. And that's overly permissive. And what we can do is we can go in and we can dump those credentials into clear text, get what the passwords are for the SMB user, or they might even be using individual user accounts. There's so many different things that they do, and I've seen weird varieties, but printers are a big one. And a lot of people don't secure their printers because they're just like, it's just a printer. Why do I need to change the password on it? But it's a really big one to start thinking outside the box on. Jenkins instances, if you have any developers, Jenkins sometimes is wide open. You can use that to get a shell in their machine as well. And there's just a lot of different things. So you're going to look through the web logins you see. If you see some sort of login, go research that page, look up what the default credentials are, look up if there's any known vulnerabilities for what's running, and just enumerate that network. Okay, so while we're looking for initial attack vectors, we're looking for hashes with responder. We're looking to get that loot back from man in the middle 6, or maybe even strike gold and get an account created on the domain controller right away. And if that happens, if you get domain admin in like 2 hours and you're sitting there for a 40-hour assessment, guess what? Chances are you're probably going to have to go back and try it a different way and find as many paths as possible. So just keep thinking about how you want to do that. But look for responder, look for man in the middle 6, look around the network and sweep around with your Nmap and look for any SMB that's open with the SMB signing disabled, and start picking out targets for your SMB relay attacks as well. So maybe that's something you might attempt in the afternoon. You try to capture hashes in the morning, and then you start relaying hashes in the afternoon, and you could spend just one day doing that, and then spend another day focusing on man in the middle 6. You want to give your client the best comprehensive coverage that you can, and try to find all the low-hanging fruit if it's their first assessment, or try to find those unique ways in if it's not their first assessment. So remember, it's a timed assessment. We only have so much time. If it's a really, really bad environment, then we need to get all the critical findings out of the way. If it's a tougher environment, it's been pen tested before, it might take us all 40 hours to find any way in, or we might not even find a way in at all, and that's okay as well. So the last thing I want to say is to start thinking outside the box. So when you have an environment, sometimes you're going to run into weird things. I've run into environments where there was no SMB. I've run into environments where there was no LM&R, and you just have to start looking around at what's available to you. And one story that I can think about is that I was in this very small medical environment, and there was maybe 20 machines, and there was no SMB in this network, no LM&R. I could not get leverage anywhere. And then I found, by listening in the middle, I found some clear text coming through on a password. Okay, the password was going for IMAP, and the IMAP was just running in clear text. And I took that password and I started passing that password around, and I got into a phone system. And in that phone system, I had the ability to change some stuff. I could change, where the phones were redirected and forwarded. And then I started thinking, okay, well, what can I do with the phone system? So I started looking at their Microsoft Outlook, and their Outlook had a password reset functionality. The password reset functionality went to their Office phones. Guess who controlled the Office phones? I did. So what if I said, I want to reset the user, somebody I know that's an admin, I want to reset their password. And with that reset, I want to forward that to my phone instead of the Office phone it's going to. So when it rings up, I say, yeah, I'm the user. Here's my code or token or whatever they send you. And go ahead and let's change that password. And you bypass the multi-factor authentication there. So thinking outside the box is a big one. You're going to run into situations where these initial attack vectors might not work for you, and just enumerating and seeing what's out there is the most important. You might not have a situation where Responder works, or Man-in-the-Middle 6 works, or SMB Relay works. You might have to look at what ports are open on these machines. You might have to look around and really focus the websites first. That's my big one. If you're struggling, focus the websites and just see what's out there and try to get your leverage in. Start thinking outside the box and just enumerate. The more you enumerate, and I've been harping on this the entire course, the more you enumerate, the better attacker you're going to be. Don't just focus on the exploit. Focus on as much information as you can gather, and you're going to be super successful. So that's my spiel for this. We're going to go ahead and move into post-compromise enumeration. We're going to talk about using PowerShell, a tool called PowerView, and we're going to talk about Bloodhound as well. We'll do a little bit of enumeration, and then we'll get into some post-compromise attacks, and that's where a lot of the real fun begins, and we can start leveraging some of the stuff we've done in this section and really utilizing that to move upward. So far, we've kind of just moved laterally. We're going to start moving upward now, and really take over that domain admin, learn some cool tools and techniques, and then we'll be well on our way in the course. So I'll catch you over in the next section.